For the last 2 days, I've been filled with a kind of oceanic sadness. And I don't think it belongs to Bruce. It's not personal. It's not something I have any reason to be experiencing, particularly other than the fact that I always resist coming to Big Indian. But I don't think that would account for the bigness of this feeling. And it's not a negative feeling, really. It's sort of a way of looking at life, understanding in many ways its tragic aspect, its level of struggle, level of disappointment for many people. In a way, we're all in the pursuit of happiness. But the reason for that pursuit is because of just how much underlying sadness there really is. And this morning, I thought, boy, how am I going to teach this class? I'm feeling so sad. And I think, I always think of this class as kind of uplift on some level, but this voice in me said, just talk about the sadness. And try to understand that it's not yours, it belongs to everybody. And that everybody can and probably will relate on some level. Now, if each of you or any of you today are in a state of happiness, that's terrific, and don't change it for me. But I know it will probably find its way back into the sadness of being, and in truth, the truth as I know it, it keeps oscillating. Happiness, sadness, sometimes a level kind of existence that we all find ourselves wanting desperately to hold on to, but it has a way of, like ocean currents, they're warm and they're cold, and wind comes and wind blows away, and there are days that are hot and muggy, and there are days that are crisp and beautiful, and there are days that are very still, and there are days that are very turbulent. So we all have those qualities and experiences in ourselves. Here's the problem. When the sadness starts to rise up in us, and we can put any other word besides sadness, but I'm going to use it for now because it's been what has been taking place. When it begins to rise up inside us, the feeling is that it's ours, that it's my sadness, that I created this sadness, that I somehow found in myself a causality that made this sadness take place. And in owning that sadness, we latch onto it. And not only do we latch onto it, but we give it a kind of linkage to all the past sadnesses that we've had. So for some people, you can actually go back to maybe, 2 years old, 1 year old, and you can trace a line. And when it's really dominant, when it comes in a very big way, and it starts to trace the line backward, you become overwhelmed by what you think is a lifelong sadness. The teaching that I want to share with you, that I've been trying to share with you for a very long time, and it's not my teaching, it's a universal teaching, but the teaching is that which arises within you, the emotion, the thought that comes into you, is not yours. It just exists. Just like the wind passing through is not the wind that belongs to you, it's just the wind. The sun comes out and you can go, oh boy, it's coming out to shine on my wonderful day, or something like that, but it really has very little to do with you. It's just sun coming up, and the nighttime comes, and it's not because it's punishing you. It's because that's how it works. It comes up and it goes down. There are vagaries to experience that everybody has, and as soon as you can begin to find a way to not label it as yours, you begin to find the doorway to liberation. As long as you think the world is about you, you will be doing a dance with the world that will have wonderful moments and terrible moments, beauty and awe and horror and sadness beyond belief. Because that's the nature of being. Being is this extraordinarily powerful dualistic force. It's a positive, negative, good, evil, light, dark, and it's constantly oscillating in its own particular ways. And we are all in that dance, every one of us. And we're not only in the dance, we take these thoughts that we have, that we decide are ours, and these feelings that we have, that we take personally, and we build a structure. And I've been talking about this a lot recently, so those of you who've been following my talks will be familiar with it, but we build a structure that we give our name. And that structure is a kind of history of the happy moments, the sad moments, the good thoughts, the bad thoughts. We build a drama that is, in a sense, our story and our life. And for most people in the world, there is no perspective on that. It's just the way it works. You know, I have a shitty life, I have a beautiful life, I have a good day, I have a bad day, I hate my work, I love my work. Whatever the thing is that goes on in your life, most people go, that's my life. You know, get me to a TV show, or let me go to a ball game, or let me do something to get out of all the tension. You know, let me find a way to, not have to deal with all the stuff in life. And you look for any escape you can get, a nice cold beer, run a good run, whatever your thing is, you find your way to not have to face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, which is what life is. And a few times in that experience that most of us have, you have a period of, I often call it initiation, and it's really part of the human journey, because most lives kind of don't have it or have it so briefly that it doesn't register. But what happens is we go on this life, birth, childhood, midlife, creating a new life, if maybe, the old age, death. That's the journey. We're all on it. Nobody's going to escape that directive. Nobody. But sometimes along that journey, something happens. Sometimes they call it a come to Jesus moment. Something you go, what is this? What is this thing? Why am I going through this? What is going on here? Trust me, not everybody answers or even asks that question. Let's say asks. Very few people answer it. What is this thing that we're in? Why is it happening? How does this thing come about? Why am I born? What is this body? What are these feelings? What is all this stuff that's going on? These are huge questions. And mostly, something has to happen to initiate that questioning. And it can be, like I said, a moment that's so existentially disturbing that you stop everything you're doing and just go. And it's an essential moment in life. Essential. Because you just stop taking life as it is and you start to finally question its meaning. And it can happen through drugs, it can happen through terrible tragedy. Terrible tragedy, as awful as it is potentially a doorway to God, or to self, or to source, or whatever you want to call it. It's a doorway to something that goes, I am here. Mostly what happens when you enter that doorway is that you find an embrace. You find this sweet embrace. But mostly, to get there, you have to recognize that you are completely helpless in this lifetime. You are completely helpless. And when you have an existential moment, when you have a certain kind of conscious awakening, you realize how vast you are, or how vast it is, and how small you are in it, how unsafe and unprotected you are in it, how much you are at the vagaries of fate. And at some point you may come to this feeling of, please help me. Please help me. Rudy in his teaching always talked at the core of the introductory class about asking for help. He would say help to surrender. I would say, if you will, help to accept what is. Please help me to get through this moment. Please help me to open to the universe. There's a lot of ways of interpreting that phrase, but the please help me is at the core of it. And the please help me is essential. When you're a little child and you hurt yourself, or you get unhappy and you're deeply sad and you feel things you don't understand, when you're 2 years old, you run to your mommy. You run to your mommy, and your mommy, if she's a good mommy, and I hope most of us had something, especially when we were 2 years old, approaching a good mommy, and your mommy takes you like this and says it's okay. And they embrace you, they hold you. Your mommy loves you, and you feel touched, cared for, healed, better, protected, in the grasp of something that cares about you. And that feeling of mommy doesn't last pretty much beyond 4 years old, because suddenly you're too big to cry, you're too big to run to mommy. You start to learn how to kind of try to handle this on your own, and none of us are great at that. But we all try to figure out, how do I do this? How do I deal with my sadness? How do I deal with the hurts of other kids not liking me, or not being picked for the baseball team, or what, all these things, there's horrible things that happen to us in our childhood, and we start to build up defenses and walls and structures that create the personality that we are. And that personality tries to get us through life as best it can. And if you're lucky, you'll kind of, lucky may be the wrong word, under many circumstances, you'll get the whole ride all the way through life, and you will come to the end of it, maybe at that moment saying, wow, what was that? What was that? Because getting perspective is hard, but it's easy at the last moments. Suddenly you look back on the whole thing and you don't understand it, you don't know why you were going there particularly, but you do get a big perspective. But this idea of asking for help feels like asking your mommy to hold you. Or not even asking, just running back to her and she just takes you. There is an essential aspect of being that I've tried to describe it as source, oneness, God, higher consciousness. It has all these phrases. But one of its core aspects is its embrace. And when you ask it for help, if you truly ask for help, it comes. And you feel just like this. It's so beautiful. But you have to kind of ask like a little child. You have to ask from a place of real need, real hurt, real helplessness, where you cannot find your own temporary voice to power you through it. Because we all have voices that can do that. Toughen up, you don't need to go there, don't worry about it. And then it gets shattered, it gets shattered by so many different things. And then you really need that help. And we all go to so many different places for that help that doesn't help. But the one place you can go is to source. And how do you get to source? Well, it's a journey. Some people maybe are lucky enough to just say, please help me, or pray, or say, Jesus, come to me, or Buddha, or Muhammad, or something, and say, please help me through this, and you get an embrace, and you've been helped. But for many people, it's a kind of mythic journey. It's a really big journey. And that journey is, in a way, for the ring that Frodo goes looking for. You know, it's like, you don't want to be on this journey, but you're on it. And much of what that journey is asking, how can I get help? How can I find my way? And once you embark on that journey, there's a lot of places you can go. You can go to the heart of your own religion. Religion has lots of answers for people. The only problem with all of those answers is they're coming from outside you. They're coming from the religion. And so you can believe in the teaching, you can say yes, but until it rises up within you as your own understanding, as your own knowledge, it will always be something that's grafted on. It will always be something the mind takes hold of and uses to kind of stabilize you and help you feel better. But that isn't enough. The real journey is not to get somebody else's words, including mine, to come into you and take care of business. The idea is to be able to hear yourself. Hear the source of your own life. To hear your own higher voice, if you will, speaking to you and ultimately comforting you. Because the source that you're looking for is not other than you. It just is not the you that you're used to. It's not the ego-minded self that thinks, I am this person, I am this body, I am these characteristics, I am this personality, I am a good person, I'm a bad person, I'm a wounded person, I'm a glorious person. Whatever your thinking is, that is all a very temporal, time-based reality. It is only going to be there for a while, and then it's going to disintegrate, or it's going to just leave you. And there will be this thing called death. And this thing called death, which everyone fears dramatically, this thing called death is the end of the dualistic you, the I and me, the good me, the bad me, the higher self, the lower self, the loving self, the hating self, the doubting self, the believing self. All of that self, which you identify with in one way or another with your own particularly constructed configuration, whatever that self is going to completely decompose. It's going to disintegrate, maybe in a second, in an instant, maybe slowly. But there is a journey into dismantling that self, which will lead you to a clearer and a very dynamic relationship with that which remains when that self is dismantled. And that's you. And the real you comes through one particular form of reaching, which we call meditation or sitting. Because when you sit still, which is a very strange thing for most Westerners to even contemplate, but when you sit still and you start to be quiet inside and you start to look at thoughts as they rise up, look at emotions as they start to happen, you begin to get perspective. And so you find a meditation teacher who teaches you how to sit still, and they will give you techniques which will be of some value, and you will start this process of watching you, watching the rising up of a thought that either will grab you or you will go, and the thought will go. And you'll watch some thoughts get into the emotional realm in your chest, and they'll start to turn into memories you don't like, things you don't want to think about, old regrets, old dramas will all start to build up, and then you're caught in this drama or you're caught in your head, and that meditation is really basically sort of a wasted moment. Not truly wasted, because you are beginning a practice where you start to go no to that thought, no to that emotion. You go, that is not my emotion. That is not my thought. I know it has my name on it, but it's not mine. And I can really not engage it. And when you let it go, it just goes, it's gone. Gone. It's not yours. It didn't take you. It didn't grab you. The emotion that followed didn't grab you. And you just sit there in this state of, wow, this is nice. There's no me forming. There's no person forming. The release of thought, the release of emotion is the release of you. The you that you know is essentially a created entity from thought and emotion. So when you don't build it for a period of a few minutes or however long you can go, you just have this sense of, and it is so exquisitely simple and beautiful. And it has some qualities that you can think of, that you can call them bliss, stillness, nothingness, openness, joy, availability, comfort. There's just these qualities that kind of exist in that state. And as long as you don't allow anything to come into that state, you are in a state of being open to yourself. And if you can sit there for a long time, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into yourself. There are old schools of meditation that just say, go into a cave and do that. And then there are schools, and we are really in a school that Rudy taught, that leaving life behind and sitting in that space is not the practice that we do. The practice that we do is the practice of finding that space in the world, in our life, in the manifested form that we have taken on. So the balance, the yin-yang of being really, really quiet while you are alive and active in the world is an amazing dance. It's an amazing effort. It requires a kind of muscle system that you have to build inside that allows you not to hold on to anything but to let go of everything. Rudy always said the muscle of spiritual work is a muscle of letting go. And then you get to enter life with enormous clarity and simplicity, with your eyes wide open, with your emotions subdued, if you will, or quieted down, with your thoughts not being personal. What starts to happen is thoughts are there, but they're not yours, but they are thoughts that come from somewhere, and often they are revelatory. I find that in the really quietude of your being, when a thought comes up, it is a discovery of something new, rather than a rehashing of something old. You find that you're no longer seeking things in the world, but you are still discovering, which is what I talked about last week. Discovery is ongoing, and it does not have to be personal. Discovery is impersonal. It's the self-being. And because every moment of reality is its own totally new, fresh moment of existence, every moment is a discovery. Every moment is a revelation. You live in a state of wonder and awe. And what really happens at some point when you start to dismantle the ego-mind structure, when you stop owning your thoughts and owning your emotions and just letting them be, when they're no longer yours, you are no longer you. And that's called enlightenment, or traveling lighter, or awakening, meaning you no longer are dreaming yourself into existence, you are awake in this lifetime. These thoughts and emotions are fantasies. They're created based on very little knowledge, based on very strange experiences in your life. Strange, I mean, something hits you the wrong way at a certain time, and then you just lock it into the system, and you suddenly, if someone says, God, you're fat, when you're 8 years old, the rest of your life you're fat. I don't care what you try to do. You're always going to be dieting your whole life because somebody locked something in. It's crazy. But people live like that. We all live like that. We all live with things that people programmed us with, that we programmed ourselves with, and we're all living in a state of congestion. And this process of letting go, asking for help to surrender, letting the universe absolutely come through and help you is the most extraordinary way to grow as a human being. You know, Rudy used to say that the first part of spiritual life is becoming a whole person. And you can't have a spiritual life if parts of you are still forming opinions and dramas and emotions that are still constructing a part of the house. You know, you may have gotten rid of part of the house, but some of the house is still getting very, very reinforced. It's an amazing journey, and I've been watching it in myself for the last 5 years particularly, the journey of dismantling, the journey of watching you fall away. Because even when awakening or enlightenment take place, the enlightenment is basically that you exist independently of the story. That your story and your name and your mind and your history go poop, but you're still there. This being is still there, it's still alive, it's still in the world, and that's remarkable. And it has a tendency sometimes to want to recreate or reinforce the person who was there. And so you have to stay very vigilant as a being and just go, no, no, no. And it goes on all day long. And the more you recognize that what you are is everything, all emotion, all thought, all existence, that you are totality itself. That's what you are. You can limit it to a little person and be it in that person's construct, but that person is temporary. This thing seems to have no beginning and no end. And it's really who you are. Who you are is not the limited personal self that you deal with all day long. It's something much bigger, much more amazing, and ultimately, in spite of all of its manifested self, it refines itself in something we call nothingness, emptiness. That's what we go back to. And that emptiness takes us in the same way deep sleep takes us in. It's like, that's who we are. And this life journey that we're on either leads to this awakening in the way that it sort of would lead to the Holy Grail. You know, the final goal of life is really to realize who you are in it. The Holy Grail is the awakening to your true self. You know, to get the ring. We're all on that. It's an epic quest. And either you're on that epic quest, or you are living the life of a normal human being. Nothing wrong with that. But that normal human being, at some point, will still come across this unbelievable revelation of who one is. And if they are not at a point where they can let go, or have let go a little bit at a time, you have to let go of the whole structure at one instant. The whole thing you've been and are, or think you are, has to go. And my experience, albeit a drug experience from the 1960s, when that took place for me for the first time, it's horrifying. Horrifying. It was like, I couldn't believe that everything I thought I was didn't exist, or had no value, had no import. It was just a figment of some vast imagination. It was so painful. And it took, because I was time-based, it felt like billions and billions of years to process all of that, which I think I did at that point, and I ended up in a state of nothingness. And then, for reasons I still don't understand, that nothingness seemed to be impregnated, and I came back. And I came back to this. And I said, why? And this higher voice said to tell people what you saw. So that's all I'm doing. And I tried it in movies, and I try it this way. I try to just sit here and talk to you and tell you it as I have seen it. There seem to be a lot of other people saying the same thing, so I don't think I'm the only one giving this information. I know I'm not. And I'm just one voice for many, many voices that is trying to get through to you, that's basically saying, stop this false identity with a suffering self. Stop. You don't have to do it. You may want to do it out of habit and out of history and out of, genetic need, but you don't have to do it. You can be free of this thing that you think you are. You can be absolutely free of it. It will not be over. The journey will not be over. At least that's my experience. The journey continues in some unbelievably vast, powerful way, but it ain't your journey. It's just the unfolding of what is. And it goes into manifested form, and it retreats into the unmanifested form. And I can't even tell you a tiny idea of why it's going on, other than that it wants to happen. And we are it. We are it. That's all we are. And you can either say yes to it or no. We were at a dinner party last night where basically everybody would say no to this whole idea, and you can't even talk about it. But I did talk about it to one woman who is a very well-known historian. And I started talking about giving up your story. She said, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" She said, "I'm an historian. That's what I'm about. I'm about the importance of story." And I talked to her about, your own story. And she said, "No." And she was very upset because she doesn't have children and she doesn't have anyone to carry on her story. And she hasn't written a book about herself because her life's not anything to write a book about. And so I said, there's a lot of suffering in holding on to story. She said, "And I'm going to suffer." And she will. She will, because she will not let go of that story. And I completely understand it, and I loved her, and I hugged her, and felt for her completely. And I was with these people, and I kept going, there's nothing I can say to anybody here, really, other than her, that is going to share this message. But the one thing I can do, and I have been learning how to do more and more, is to be present with these people. In other words, to just show up and be there. Be there. And that's our job. For those of you who are in this awakening experience, for those of you who are discovering the value of awakening, you may think it's for you. But let me trust me, it's for other people. Your awakening is not to make you feel like an enlightened person, because that's just another form of identity and another form of story. It's to get rid of all of that so you can just be a living presence with another human being, and that means whoever's in front of you. And dinner parties are amazing for that, because there are so many people there who you will have maybe 3 minutes with, or 4. And your opportunity to be present with each of those people is amazing. And it's picked up. I mean, Blanche and I took a cab to the airport in San Francisco, and I just sat there feeling such gratitude for being. And the cab driver says, "It is so peaceful tonight." And I knew he was just being filled. The cab was filled with peace. And I just went click. It was working. That's all. It was working. My son had it's a big story, but he was stuck in a very bad position in a job that he was not happy with on a certain film, a video game he was working with. And we had lunch, and we just talked. And it was a moment where he was really suffering, and I just felt this voice, this presence, this myself, my higher self, come through and talk to him. And I could feel it was talking to him, and I could tell he was in a place of such suffering and discomfort that he could hear me. Because mostly it's hard to talk to your children spiritually. In any way, not always, but sometimes. But this was the opening. And one thing you learn, by the way, is this yielding force. You can feel when someone is yielding to presence. They just do it. They just, and you can tell when they're not yielding to presence. So when they're yielding, you go forward. When they're not yielding, do not push on them, because that will not work. It will just build resistance. But when a person yields, you let it flow. And he was yielding, and this energy came into him, and we were able to have this extraordinary talk. And it was so interesting, because when we were done, we went back to his house. He had to get something. And the minute he got in the door, the phone rang, and he had been given a new position in his job. He was removed from that particular show and put on the one he wanted to be from the whole time. It just went, shifted. Not to say that's how it's always going to work, but it was such a wonderful moment because there was no way for him to engineer this thing to have happen. But when he truly opened up and got out of the way and just let the energy of the universe come through, when he understood he was helpless in the situation, when he asked for help, which he did privately, internally, I could feel it. And I told him, I said, I can't pray, I can't intercede for you in the universe. I can pray and I can beseech God, but you're the one who has to ask, because it's not going to come from me. And I've now started direct dialogues with myself, and I keep praying for the universe. It's not like you're not really praying, but just wanting the beauty that wants to be, to have an opportunity to manifest. I think part of the sadness that I feel, and we feel perhaps, is we look at the world right now and we say to ourselves, ay, 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 global warming. We have drought in California, Los Angeles, our trees are dying, our grass is dying. Our house up in San Rafael, we're taking the water from the shower when we warm it up in the morning and we put it in a bucket and we take it outside. Blanche takes it outside and pours it on a tree that's not surviving. And we're living a different life. Anyone who watched the the Republican debate, the first one, you go, and you look at the whole spectrum of people, of who's going to lead us through this period, and it's like you're helpless. You're just helpless. What can we can vote for somebody, maybe, and maybe that will help. But I feel helpless, but in a good way. Because I just go, basically, thy will be done. And I trust the journey, and I feel very connected to myself. And that self works. It doesn't mean I'm spared 2 days of unbearable sadness that I don't understand at all. But it made sense this morning when I realized, well, it was here to be shared. It was here to be acknowledged. That's why it was happening. It's not about you, Bruce. It's not about your being sad, because I had no reason to be sad. It was because collectively something needed to be shared about it. And so the takeaway from today's talk, honestly, is it's not your sadness. It's not your anything. If you can get quiet enough and still enough, if you can make this practice of sitting a muscular practice, if you can muscularly let go on a daily basis of all this stuff that's trying to attach to all the stuff that comes up in your life, from the TV, from the newspaper, from way inside you, if you can just let it go, let it go. It doesn't mean you have to be uninformed, you just don't have to buy it. Just look at it as a source of wisdom. Aha, aha, aha. And you stay relaxed with it, you will find yourself. And in finding yourself, you will find the comfort of your own little mommy. Someone who loves you profoundly, which is you. And it will take you in, and it will take care of you. And that's what we're all reaching for. We are not trying to escape, we're trying to be real. And what is real loves what you are. This is the journey. We're all trying to get that message. I'm trying to deliver it as clearly and simply as possible. If you're sitting here going, but, I apologize, because that but's going to hurt you. Your butts are going to get in the way. They always do. You always have a reason to go, yes, but. And that but is the end of not the end, but it's like, that's what you have to work on. You've got to break it down so that you don't have a but. You just say yes. You just say yes. You just become one with what is, and you will find the freedom you've been seeking from time immemorial. Probably multiples of lifetimes, if that's how it works. And there's no reason not to find it now. And the idea that you're going to put it off to next week or to tomorrow, maybe tomorrow's meditation I'll get there. No, that's why I hate retreats. Because everybody thinks in a retreat it's going to build, and you're going to finally get there at the end of the retreat. You don't get there at the end of anything, you get there now. This is it. This is it. It's not going to ever be different than this. It's never going to be more pointed. It's never going to be more specific. This is it. And if you really don't understand what I'm saying, and I completely get that, then listen to your own voice. Do the journey. Do the reaching. Do the asking. Ask for help. Feel that helplessness serving you rather than causing you suffering and misery. It's all ultimately there to be found. And you're on your path. And I can only push you. I know as hard as I try, I cannot get this into your head. I know, I can't do it. I've tried it's been years now. I can't do it. So you take it on or don't. And if you don't, that's fine. But if you think you're going to get it the next time you come here, well, I mean, maybe you will. But I would say get it now. Any questions?
This reminds me of the wonderful talk we had the last time you were here about when you wake up in the morning and you're in this perfect state of being. And you can lie there for a few minutes and you can make it up your entire day. What you're talking about now is taking this wonderful state of being where you own yourself and you comfort yourself and you are your own answer and solution. And then we were saying how then you just go, oh shit, and go through your list. So it's that little area before you go through your list, and just don't go through your list. Just get up and see.
It's very hard for people to do that. And I really acknowledge that. I get it completely. But the training of meditative life is learning how to see that list forming and just go later. Or to take it on in a way that is not condemning you to anxiety and concern and fear and doubt and all the stuff that usually goes with the list. Oh my God, if I don't get that done, what's going to happen? They got to come at this hour and I got a plan to go there. All that stuff, bless you, all that stuff happens, and you're in a state of complete discombobulation, and your whole day plays out that way. You know? And if it doesn't start with the list, it'll start a little while later. Or you'll be reading the newspaper and you'll read about ISIS, and suddenly your head goes crazy and you're back in the Middle Ages and you're horrified by life, and that's not it either. Look at all that and know it has never been other. The wisdom of seeing clearly is the fact that it has always been thus, that the world is beautiful and ugly, evil and good, kind. It's everything. It's everything. And as a created person, you are a victim, if you will, of everything. You will experience it all, oscillating forever until you finally reach a place of true stillness where you don't have to engage it.
Well, don't you reflect that universe and being ugly and beautiful and still and turbulent?
Yes, of course. No, that's we are the reflection of that duality. That split into duality, which is what we live in. That's the world. It's a fascinating world. We all kind of love it. We're all definitely compelled by it, but we're also trapped by it in some way, and it doesn't end well, which is really a very big part of the journey.
I just want to thank you for coming. The other thing is I want to ask you, what do you do if you're living with a mother who's Sicilian?
I lived with a mother who's Jewish, I mean, we all live with mothers, right? And that mother who was a total comfort to you when you were 1 year old is not always a comfort to you when you're 40, or other.
65.
Yeah.
67.
No, we all, mother, it changes, the roles change. But mother represents, the true mother, let me just put this into clarity, the idea of self as being, let's say, fatherly or masculine is a real problem, especially for men, or maybe for women too. The idea that you're dealing with a one-sexed creator is not true. And that the idea of mothering energy is as much a part of one's deepest self as the creative, well, that is the creative, as the divine being that we all are, which is male, female. It's the mixture of everything, and you can be mothered by it. You can be spoken to strongly by it. You know, you can be in its thrall. There's so many ways to relate to self, but ultimately it is a deeply compassionate entity. It's working for you, not against you. You are its emblematic form in the world. You're here for it. It wants you here. That's what's so extraordinary. We're all here because of it, and all of us have to function as deeply as we can to serve it. That's the journey. And the real journey is to remember what it is, and then you serve it with such pristine beauty. You know, the great saints are people who absolutely reflect it directly into being. And that's what we're all trying to be. Every one of you is saintly. Every one of you you're so close to saintliness. All you have to do is get out of your own way and stop being limited by the person you think you are. That person is a vehicle through which this light can pour. Let it pour, and then be present for the world. Be a gift to the world, because that's what you are. Barbara.
I just wanted to tell you that I don't necessarily think that it has to end so poorly. I think recently that there was a movie called The Little Death, which is a French film, Petit Amour, and it means orgasm. So,
Yeah, no, look,
so an end can be also
that's true. That's true. I don't want to be didactic and say death is a terrible thing, but I have to say, for many people, it's an unknown that is hard to deal with, and it's often kind of painful. On the other hand, I will tell you, one of the things about self is that has a morphine aspect, which means those of you who've ever had morphine, the pain is still there, but it's not engaging you. And this gives you a kind of larger blanket around your suffering, if you will. And it really inoculates you against some of the pain of the world. And that's a great gift, you know. But not to go to it for that.
No.
Because,
I just need to surrender.
yeah. Anybody else?
I've been so interested to hear you talk about the more feminine, the mother kind of thing. I pray every morning for my children and anyone else I need that they would be open to the Shekinah, the Jewish idea of the nurturing feminine aspect of God. And when you say that you were praying for the universe, I'm wondering, you're praying just...
It's not, I can't say it's prayer in the sense that I can direct anything, or that I think God doesn't know what's going on, that it's not all happening. It's just, it's a way of reaching. It's a way of saying that I too hope, that whatever I is, hopes for the benefit of mankind and for all living creatures and all things big and small. That's all it is. That I join in on the journey with that which is manifesting all of this, and that I wish for its ultimate reality to be acknowledged and to be perceived by all who are conscious.
Talk just a little bit about just some words of guidance about living while being dismantled.
Living while being dismantled is what you've been doing. You, Jordan, have been doing for a very long time, and doing rather brilliantly. It takes, parts of you fall away. Identities fall away. You were a school teacher for a long time. You're not exactly a school teacher at this point. That part of you is gone. It's left a kind of indelible mark. You changed the lives of many, many people, many students, including my own son. You had an enormous gift that you gave the world, but that's not what you are anymore. That teacherly quality in you now is finding new expression in teaching this. It's part of who you are, but it's not part of your day-to-day functioning. And I don't think there's a part of you that's longing to bring it back in its own old form. It's sort of gone. And a big part of our sex chakra, let's call it, the part of renewal, really, lets things fall away, and then renews us in a much bigger way to become a bigger tree than we ever were. And the more that falls away, the bigger we become, the more one we become with all that is. So you let go and you find a certain gentility, a certain simplicity, a certain wholeness, a certain compassion for everybody who's going through the same thing, and you become lighter and lighter and freer, and that's your journey. And I know you're going through it because I feel it as I sit here. So let's break now because we have another session at 3.